Okay, here we go. I'm gonna do this Face of the Nation interview with Marco Rubio. And just so you guys remember, I'm not gonna let this lady get away with the bullshit she tried to pull last time. I still remember that Nazi Germany interview. But this is the same exact lady last time. Let me show you this. I will not let this lady live that shit down.
Well, he was standing in a
Here.
country where free speech was weaponized to conduct a genocide. And he met with the head of a political party that has
Mm-hmm.
far right views and some historic ties to extreme groups. The context of that was changing the tone of it. And you know that the
Well, I have to
censorship
disagree with
was
you.
specifically about the
No,
right.
I have to disagree with you.
Oh no.
Free speech was not used to conduct a genocide. The genocide was conducted by an authoritarian Nazi regime that happened to also be genocidal because they hated Jews and they hated minorities and they hated those that they had a list of people they hated, but primarily the Jews. There was no free speech in Nazi Germany. There was none. There was also no opposition in Nazi Germany. They were a sole and only party that governed that country. So that's not an accurate reflection of history.
Yeah. But anyways, as you can see, that lady pulled that bullshit last time. It's the same lady. I remember her. I will not forget you because of that bullshit you pulled. But we're gonna do the Face of the Nation interview. And oh my god, I'm gonna say it. I bet 100% this man's ready for some extra bullshit. But I bet 100% Marco Rubio was thinking before this, why is it that I always have to deal with this lady anytime I talk? But Trump, he can just deal with Fox News instead. Oh my god. But anyways, let's get to this. I'm ready for some absolute bullshit to be pulled.
And
Here we
other
go.
European leaders are heading to Washington Monday to meet with President Trump to discuss next steps following Mr. Trump's meeting with Vladimir
Yep.
Putin. The awkward conclusion to Friday's summit yielded no formal agreement, with Vladimir Putin still insisting that Ukraine turn over the lands seized by Russia in the war, plus
Yeah. Russia basically wants this entire territory. This is the main one they want. It's a very important trade route in terms of Ukraine. That's one of the biggest factors that Russia wants out of this. So if Russia gains this, it's literally like a complete win for Russia. And unlike other nations that truly care about how many casualties happen, Russia really does not care how many people die in this war, which is something that has to be taken into account, which is however much you think of this, Zelensky, he cares about his men dying. Putin, he does not give a shit. They will send as many men to be slaughtered as possible to get this war done. Literally following in the footsteps of Joseph Stalin doing the same exact shit.
additional territory, something that President Zelensky continues to refuse. We begin with Secretary of State Marco Rubio,
Here
who
we go.
attended those talks in Anchorage. Good morning to you, Mr. Secretary.
Good morning.
Yep.
Thank you.
Vladimir Putin did not give President Trump the ceasefire he sought, and now Putin says the root causes of the conflict have to be resolved in a peace agreement. Isn't the root cause the fact that Russia invaded in the first place?
I'll give her that. Technically, yes. But the reason they're skipping the ceasefire is once again, Russia does not respect the ceasefire. If any amount of time is given to Ukraine in a ceasefire, even if it's 30 days, 20 days, it'll give them enough time to reinforce a lot of their bases, which in turn would make it harder for Russia to actually continue the war. That's the reason why Russia's not gonna bother with any ceasefire agreements. It's just bullshit on paper to him. It doesn't matter at all. And that's the biggest reason why you see Russia keeps breaking these ceasefire agreements.
Well, ultimately, yeah. But I mean, what he means by root causes is his long historical complaints that we've heard repeatedly. This is not a new argument. He's been making this for a long time. And it's the argument that it's Western encroachment. I don't want to get into it. It's just so long. But the bottom line is that we're not going to focus on all of that stuff. We're going to focus on this. Are they going to stop fighting or not? And what it's going to take to stop the fighting. And what it's going to take to stop the fighting, if we're being honest.
Oh, since he skipped it, I'll just tell you. Basically, they've been fighting for this shit for like 14 years, but Russia wants Ukraine because It was a former part of the Soviet Union. They don't want, like, their sphere of influence attacked by Western nations as well. He basically wants not only control of the land, but as well a way to keep Western nations out of influencing, like, people in Ukraine. That's one of the main things on his side of the war.
And serious here is both sides are going to have to give, and both sides should expect to get something from this. And that's a very difficult thing to do. It's very difficult because Ukraine obviously feels, harmed, and rightfully so, because they were invaded. And the Russian side, because they feel like they've got momentum in the battlefield and frankly don't care. Don't seem to care very much about how many Russian soldiers die in this endeavor. They just churn through it. So I think what the president deserves a lot of credit for is the amount of time and energy that his administration is placing on reaching a peace agreement for a war that's not a war that started under him. It's half, it's on the other side of the world. That said, I mean, it's relevant to us, but there are a lot of...
Yeah. But as he said, it's on the other side of the world, and it is relevant to us only because Russia is our second biggest enemy, with our first one being China still. We don't want to send troops on the ground. We definitely don't want that. But we're making an effort to stop a war that's not even close to us at all, to be honest.
Of other issues he could be focused on. So tomorrow we'll be meeting with President Zelensky. We'll be meeting with European leaders. We just met with Putin. He's dedicated a lot of time and energy because he has made it a priority of his administration to stop or end war, stop wars or prevent them. And right now this is the biggest war going on in the world. It's the biggest war in Europe since World War II. We're going to continue to do everything we can to reach an agreement that ends the dying and the killing and the suffering that's going on right now.
But about 1.4 million were injured or died. Obviously, that's not going to be the most accurate number because the war is still going on. So that's the numbers right now. Obviously, it's going to increase, but we don't know by how much yet.
Well, I mean, you know this well, how long these kind of diplomatic negotiations often take. President Trump was telling European leaders what was discussed was Putin demanding control of Donetsk, a region in the east that his forces do not fully hold. And the UK estimates that taking that full area could be as long as another 4 years. Putin also is demanding Russian be an official language in Ukraine and something regarding Russian Orthodox churches. Did the U.S. accept all of what Putin laid out at that table?
The answer should be no, because this is like a common tactic, but Putin said a bunch of outrageous stuff he wanted. This is a common tactic where he said a bunch of outrageous stuff he wants out of this because he knows he's not going to get it, but making it his first deal kind of makes it seem like anything below it would be more reasonable. That's the main idea, and the main thing we got to do is cut through that bullshit because we know that's an absolute bullshit deal they want. They just want to make it look like any other deal that's slightly better than that is a big win for the US. That's the way they want to try and put it. So in order for them to get a lot out of it, which they should not get anything out of it.
The United States is not in a position to accept anything or reject anything because ultimately it's up to the Ukrainians. They're the ones that Russia has to make peace with.
Well, the president said he
Russia.
did come to
It's up to the
agreements.
Ukrainians to make these conditions.
I agree.
Well, the agreements were that we were going to try to do things like, for example, get a leaders meeting. We have to make enough progress so that we can sit down President Zelensky and President Putin in the same place, which is what President Zelensky's been asking for, and reach a final agreement that ends this war. Now, there were some concepts and ideas discussed that we know the Ukrainians could be very supportive of in that meeting. I don't think we're not going to negotiate this in the media. I understand that everybody wants to know what happened, but ultimately there are things that were discussed as part of this meeting that are potentials for breakthroughs, that are potentials for progress. We'll be discussing that more in depth tomorrow with our European allies, with the Ukrainians that are coming over. We'll be discussing all of these things because ultimately we do need to find areas where we're making progress and try to begin to narrow the gap between the two sides. But there's a reason why this war has been going on for 3.5 years, and that is when it comes to the big issues here, there are still some big differences between both sides. Let's see how much progress we can continue to make. It's not been easy, but it's something the president's made a priority. Peace.
And this is one of those wars that it's going to take a very long time to end or resolve anything, strictly because Russia is not interested in stopping. That's the main thing. They're not interested in stopping. So why? So we can't expect for peace to be made the next day because unlike the US or even a lot of European countries where we take casualties as a bad thing, a lot of them don't. Russia really doesn't seem to care about that. So as many men that it takes to die in that war go, it's fine with them. And with Kim Jong Un sending him troops to help out, that's also another reason for him to continue the war as long as possible.
And he deserves a lot of credit for that.
But ultimately, if Vladimir Putin is going to be offered land that he has not seized yet, but negotiates his way into, doesn't this set a dangerous precedent that the United States now accepts this concept that it is okay to seize land by force? Precedent that the United States now accepts this concept that it is okay to seize land by force.
I hope nobody tells this lady about the Mexican-American War. Anyways, let's continue.
Well, Putin's already seized land by force, and that in and of itself is not a positive precedent. This whole war
Are you
is
demanding a withdrawal?
Precedent. Well, again, in order to have a deal here to reach the end of this conflict, both sides are going to have to make concessions. That's just a fact.
Does that mean
in any negotiation,
where Russian forces are?
But if
she's farming for a clip, that's exactly what she's doing. That's why she's being so annoying about it and structuring her questions in a fucked up way. Not again, bitch. Not again.
But this is not about acceptance. This is about what Ukraine can accept and what Russia can accept. They both have to accept it. Otherwise, there won't be a peace deal. Okay? If there aren't concessions, if one side gets everything they want, that's called surrender. That's called the end of the war through surrender. And that's not what we're close to doing because neither side here is on the verge of surrender or anything close to it. So in order for there to be a peace deal, this is just a fact. We may not like it. It may not be pleasant. It may be distasteful. But in order for there to be an end of the war, there are things Russia wants that it cannot get, and there are things Ukraine wants that it's not going to get. Both sides are going to have to give up something in order to get to the table, in order to make this happen. That's just the way it is.
And that's the thing. At the end of the day, as much as U.S. involvement is to end this war, it's still a war between Russia and Ukraine at the end of the day. We don't have like supreme authority to basically tell Russia, hey, fuck off. And that's only because Russia has nuclear weapons. And that's because we don't have the supreme authority to basically tell Russia to fuck off. Because unlike what happened with Iran, Operation Nighthammer, we went in, destroyed their nuclear facility left, and nothing happened. The difference is we can't do that to Russia because Russia is a lot better armed and a lot more dangerous in every way imaginable. So we can't pull something like that on Russia, sadly to say.
And I mean, the sooner we accept that, that's the reality. Now, what those things are is going to be up to both sides. There's no conditions that can be imposed on Ukraine. They're going to have to accept things, but they're going to have to get things too. And so, for example, Ukraine is a sovereign country. They have a right, like every sovereign country does in the world, to enter into security alliances with other countries to prevent an invasion in the future, to prevent threats to their national security. That's not an unreasonable request. That's something that needs to be worked on. Territories will have to be discussed. It's just a fact. And there are things that maybe Russia's holding now that they're going to have to give up. Who knows? The point is, we need to create a scenario where that becomes possible. And that's why this has been so hard, because neither side up to now has been willing to give on some of these things. But we'll see if that's possible. It may not be, but we're going to try, and we're going to do everything we can to try to achieve a peace.
I understand you can't get into specifics in a public conversation, but we're looking at Russian troops and strikes intensifying. Did you hear anything?
Yep, we did. It's because Russia doesn't give a shit about the ceasefire. This lady has to get that through her head. Russia does not care. You know what? Let me pull this shit up. Anyways, I'll show you this. I'm gonna go into Grok because that's the one I like at least. But here it is. Here you go. The number of ceasefire agreements violated during Russia-Ukraine conflict varies by source, with estimates reflecting the complexity and duration of the conflict since 2014. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has stated Russia has violated ceasefire agreements at least 25 times since 2014. As mentioned during the international summit, on the support of Ukraine in February 2025. This figure echoed in multiple reports, including the statements from Zelensky during the meeting with the U.S. President Donald Trump, where he emphasized the need for security guarantees due to these repeated violations. However, some sources cite a significantly higher number. Military analysts referred on Wikipedia's entries on peace negotiations in the Russian invasion of Ukraine claim Russia has broken approximately 190 agreements with Ukraine and the international community since the conflict began in 2014. So this was during Obama era too. This was not even like a Biden war. This was like a Obama war that turned into a Trump war, that turned into a Biden war, that went back to Trump. But yeah, stuff like that. But yeah, those are basically the facts, which is Russia does not care about a ceasefire. And that's basically the facts. Russia does not care about a ceasefire. So this is basically an illegitimate argument. It doesn't matter because Russia doesn't care.
Anything from Vladimir Putin that indicated he is willing to make a single concession?
He's not.
Well, I think there are a couple. I mean, there were not enough for Ukraine. If not, we would be announcing a peace deal this morning, right? But certainly there are some things we noticed changes. There are some changes that I think are possible. I think there's some concepts that were discussed that could potentially lead to something. But again, all these things have to be verifiable. It isn't real until it's real. I mean, one thing is what you say you might be willing to consider. Another thing is your willingness to do it. And it always becomes a trade-off in all of this. But you talk about the intensifying strikes on the Russian side. Yeah, I mean, they're full-time war machine. I mean, that's what's happening. The Russian economy's basically been turned into a full-time wartime economy. They have a lot of people. It's a big country. It's not just large geographically. It has huge populations. It continues to churn through people. You know, they lost 20,000 Russian soldiers were killed last month in July in this war. That just tells you the price they're willing to pay. Not saying any of this is admirable. I'm saying that this is the reality of the war that we're facing. It's become attrition in some ways. It's a meat grinder, and they just have more meat to grind.
Yeah, he's 100% sure. Russia does not care. Russia does not care how many people get sent. Think about it. Their economy's a piece of shit. Everything's collapsing. Like, Russia at this point is just gonna keep fighting until eventually there's nobody left for them to send off to the meat grinder. The moment it stops truly is gonna be when either Russians have an uprising because they're sick and tired of their people dying, or they run out of people. That's basically the Russian way, which is they'll keep going as far as they have to.
Well, let me ask you about the security bit you just mentioned there, because Italy's prime minister says that President Trump revived the idea of security guarantees inspired by NATO's Article 5 and a collective security clause that would involve the United States. How does that work?
Yeah,
are these U.S. troops? Are these U.S. monitors?
Well, that's what we're going to be working on. That's one of the reasons why, you know, I talked yesterday to all the national security advisors, a bunch of them from the different European countries. There are European leaders coming here tomorrow, heads of state coming tomorrow, along with President Zelensky, to discuss this in more detail. I mean, the constructs of something like this needs to be built out. It's a concept is one thing, the reality, you know, how it's built and how it would work is another. But those are the kinds of talks that we're going to be having with them, along with some of the other issues that are at play. But that is one of the, if you were to break this thing down, I mean, there needs to be an agreement on territories and where the lines are going to be drawn. That's not going to be very easy. That's going to be tough. I think there has to be some discussion about security guarantees for Ukraine because they don't want this war to, none of us want to see this war in the future. They're a sovereign country. They have a right to have security agreements with other countries and security alliances with other countries. And then there's the whole issue of reconstruction. How do you rebuild the country? Well, potentially, like I said, that's what we're going to be having a conversation about, and that's what we're going to be meeting. That's why they're all coming here tomorrow, and that's why we've been talking on the phone for the last 48 hours with them, and even leading up to it throughout the week, there were various meetings just to sort of build out some of these ideas. So all of these right now are ideas. They're concepts that require some more specificity. We'll need to work with our partners to see what that looks like. And I think that's an area where potential progress is real, but that alone won't be enough. There's a bunch of other things that have to be worked through here.
Yeah, well, Russia claims it has rescued 700,000 children. I know you know.
Oh, I know what she's going to bring up. This is about Russia potentially, like, selling children to kidnap them.
know that the warrant out for Vladimir Putin's arrest is for the state-sponsored abduction of kids. I've seen estimates there are something like 30,000 Ukrainian children who have been abducted. Is the United States demanding, or at least even just as a statement of goodwill here, that Russia return these children?
Yeah, I mean, we've repeatedly raised that issue in every forum possible, and those have also been, by the way, topics of discussion, not just in our meetings with the Ukrainians, but in the negotiations and talks that were going on between Ukraine and Russia at the technical level. These talks were going on in Turkey, as an example. Turkey over the last few
nothing
months.
so far from
That's
the
been a
Russians.
topic of discussion as well. Well,
Yeah, stuff like that, it's absolutely sad. It's absolutely sad. We hope the kids get returned. We hope nothing bad happened to them. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's just us hoping. We don't know for sure until after everything's settled and done, like how they were treated, what happened to them. And Putin definitely is an international criminal. Like, he is a POS and he is an aggressor.
it's unfortunate. Children should be returned to their families. On that position, I don't think there's any ambiguity on our side. And they shouldn't even be, a bargaining chip in regards to a broader negotiation. But it's just one more element of how tragic this war is. After 3.5 years, this war is getting worse. It's not getting better. You've made the point about the uptick in strikes. This is a war. It's going to get worse. It's not going to get better. And that's why the president is investing so much time in bringing this to an end. And by the way, everyone is begging us to be involved in this. The Europeans want us involved. The Ukrainians want us involved. Obviously, the Russians want us involved because the president is the only leader in the world. If this is possible, he's the only one that can help make it happen.
Well,
Yeah. The thing is, we're going to be involved, but more so in negotiations/sanctions. We do not need to fight another war for another nation. We've done that too many times. I don't agree with sending more soldiers to die for another country just for them to eventually become ungrateful and spoiled, just like a lot of other wars. But yeah, everyone wants the US to get involved, but in terms of boots on the ground, we don't want that shit. We do not want that shit. Not again. All we can do is peace deals, negotiations, and inspections. As for boots on the ground, that's not something that the US population wants anymore. We're tired of all these wars sending our people to die for another country, just for them to occasionally later tell us, oh, hey, you're a piece of shit, you're the world police. Like, we're tired of that.
Got the leverage over Vladimir Putin if he wanted to crush his economy or at least do more damage to it. But you have held off on those secondary sanctions. President Trump told Fox News his advice to President Zelensky is make a deal. Russia's a very big power, and they're not. There is concern from the Europeans that President Zelensky is going to be bullied into signing something away. That's why you have these European leaders coming as backup.
Nope, they're not coming there as backup. Nope, the answer is they're not coming there as backup. They're coming there because it's an issue that is in Europe related to Russia. But the reason everyone's coming there is because Trump literally called them all to come.
Tomorrow. Can you
No, it isn't. That's not why they're coming
them?
us back. That's not true. No, but that's not that's not true. They're not coming here tomorrow to keep Zelensky from being bullied. They're
Well,
not
that
coming.
February
in fact,
Oval
they're
Office
coming
meeting
here
in
tomorrow.
front of television cameras where President Zelensky.
Do you know how many meetings
was
we've
dressed
had
down.
since then?
Oh no, I know, and I was just up in
but we've had a
Alaska
bunch of
watching the
meetings
one
since
with
then.
Vladimir Putin where a red carpet rolled
No,
out
but
for the
with
Russian leader. It was
Zelensky, we've
very
had more
different.
meetings. We've had one meeting with Putin and like a dozen meetings with Zelensky. So but
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Everyone probably remembers that one with Trump that, dude, ended horribly. I will say that. But yeah, Zelensky has been more willing to negotiate, has been more willing to talk, has been more willing to continue ceasefire deals, while Russia hasn't. That is a fact, and it's sad that things like this keep happening just for Russia to obviously take advantage of goodwill.
that's not true. They're not coming here tomorrow to keep Zelensky from being bullied. They're coming here tomorrow because we've been working with the Europeans. We talked to them last week. There were meetings in the UK over the previous weekend.
And they said President Trump was going to demand a ceasefire.
As early as Thursday. No. But you said that they're coming here tomorrow to keep Zelensky from being bullied. They're not coming here tomorrow. Oh, this is such a stupid media narrative that they're coming here tomorrow because Trump is going to bully Zelensky into a bad deal. We've been working with these people for weeks on this stuff. They're coming here tomorrow because they chose to come here tomorrow. We invited them to come. We invited them to come. The president invited them to come.
But the president told those European leaders last week that he wanted a ceasefire. The president went on television, said he would walk out of the meeting if Vladimir Putin didn't agree with one. He said there would be severe consequences if he didn't agree to one. He said he'd walk out in 2 minutes. He spent 3 hours talking to Vladimir Putin, and he did not get one. So there's
because
some mixed
obviously
messages.
things happened during that meeting. Well, because obviously look, our goal here is not to stage some production for the world to say, oh, how dramatic, he walked out. Our goal here is to have a peace agreement, to end this war, okay? And obviously we felt, and I agreed, that there was enough progress, not a lot of progress, but enough progress made in those talks to allow us to move to the next phase. If not, we wouldn't be having Zelensky flying all the way over here. We wouldn't be having all the Europeans coming all the way over here. Now understand, and take with a grain of salt, I'm not saying we're on the verge of a peace deal, but I am saying that we saw movement, enough movement to justify a follow-up meeting with Zelensky and the Europeans, enough movement for us to dedicate even more time to this. You talk about the sanctions. Look, at the end of the day, if peace is not going to be possible here, and this is just going to continue on as a war, people will continue to die by the thousands. The president has that option to then come in and impose new sanctions. But if he did this now, the moment the president puts those additional sanctions, that's the end of the talks. You've basically locked in at least another year to year and a half of war and death and destruction. We may unfortunately...
That's actually a pretty good explanation why they haven't done all those sanctions yet. I mean, Russia, depending on what they're willing to do this time, I believe it's better if we just... Russia, depending on what they're willing to do at the time, I hope we could just finally end this war. If not, sanctions are pretty much the last resort on our table. I do believe that they need a lot more sanctions, but I understand that this is part of the negotiation process currently.
Wind up there, but we don't want to wind up there. We want to wind up with a peace deal that ends this war so Ukraine can go on with the rest of their lives and rebuild their country and be assured that this is never going to happen again. That's the goal here. We're going to do everything possible to make that happen if it's doable. It will require both sides to make concessions. It will require both sides to get things they're asking for. That's how these deals are made, whether we like it or not.
Before I let you go quickly, why did the State Department just announce that they're halting visitor visas for all Gazans coming here for medical aid? Why would some of these kids...
Oh, people from Gaza. Oh yeah, she brought up kids. Oh, of course she went to that. But yeah, Israel, Gaza. The reason simply is because of terrorism. That's probably what he's going to say.
For example, who are coming to hospitals for treatment be a threat?
Well, first of all, it's not just kids, it's a bunch of adults that are accompanying them. Second, we had outreach from multiple congressional offices asking questions about it. And so we're going to reevaluate how those visas are being granted, not just to the children, but how those visas are being granted to the people who are accompanying them. And by the way, to some of the organizations that are facilitating it. There is evidence been presented to us by numerous congressional offices that some of the organizations bragging about and involved in acquiring these visas have strong links to terrorist groups like Hamas.
Yep, I knew it. Exactly. He was going to say terrorism. But that's the thing. Hamas is a literal terrorist organization. And like a lot of people don't feel like saying it, but yes, some people do support the terrorist and some people don't. The thing is, we don't know which ones do or don't because it's a separate country. So we don't know the exact number. So it's one of those things. And I always find it a problem when people like throw that at us as a why are we being bad thing, when it's more like some of these people are just being sent off to be slaughtered by Hamas themselves, and we're supposed to be the ones responsible for that, even though Hamas is the one that's starving their people and sending them off to the slaughterhouse.
And so we are not going to be in partnership with groups that are friendly with Hamas. So we're going to pause those visas. There was just a small number of them issued to children, but they come with adults accompanying them, obviously. And we are going to pause this program and reevaluate how those visas are being vetted and what relationship, if any, has there been by these organizations to the process of acquiring those visas. We're not going to be in partnership with groups that have links or sympathies towards Hamas.
Yep.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio, we have to leave it there for this morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Ukraine.
Oh, this one was not as crazy as the last one, thankfully. But anyways, that's all for this, and hopefully we could get something substantial out of this war potentially coming to an end.